Imagine waking up 65 million years ago. The titans that ruled the planet for 150 million years, the T-Rex, the Triceratops, the massive longnecks, are simply gone. The silence is deafening, but in the shadows, something is stirring. Something small, hairy, and hungry. For the next 60 million years, evolution went into a state of absolute chaos. This was the experimental phase of life on Earth. Without the dinosaurs to keep them in check, mammals didn't just grow larger, they grew weirder. We're talking about wolf pigs with hooves, sloth gorillas that walked on their knuckles, and rhinos the size of 3-story buildings. Today, we are opening the files on the 10 most bizarre mammals to ever claim the Earth after the asteroid. If you think you know prehistoric life, wait until you see what nature cooked up when the lizard kings were out of the way. Number 10. Macrauchenia, Darwin's nightmare. When Charles Darwin first found the fossils of Macrauchenia in South America, he was genuinely baffled. He described it as the strangest animal ever discovered. Imagine a creature with the body of a llama, the long neck of a giraffe, and feet that look like they belong to a rhinoceros. But the real mystery is the face. The nostrils aren't at the front of the snout, they are high up on the forehead, between the eyes. For a long time, scientists thought this meant it lived underwater like a snorkel. We now believe it actually had a short, muscular trunk, like a tapir. Imagine a camel with a trunk trying to survive in a world of giant terror birds. It was an evolutionary chimera that left no living relatives behind. Number 9. Glyptodon, the living bunker. If you could go back to the Pliocene, you might mistake a Glyptodon for a parked Volkswagen Beetle. This cousin of the armadillo didn't believe in speed, it believed in invulnerability. Its entire back was covered in a massive, rigid dome of bone scutes that could weigh up to a ton. Unlike modern armadillos, it couldn't roll into a ball, it didn't need to. It was a walking fortress. Even its head had a bone cap. But its most terrifying feature was the tail. Some species had a massive bony club at the end, sometimes covered in spikes. One swing of that tail could shatter the leg of a prehistoric predator. It was the ultimate tank of the Cenozoic, grazing peacefully while the world's most dangerous predators broke their teeth trying to find a way in. Number 8. Thylacosmilus, the other saber-tooth. Everyone knows the Smilodon, the famous saber-tooth cat. But nature actually tried that design twice. Meet Thylacosmilus. It looks like a cat, it hunts like a cat, but it's actually a marsupial. It carried its young in a pouch, just like a kangaroo. But look at those teeth. They are massive, even compared to the Smilodon. They grew throughout its entire life, meaning they never wore down. To protect these ever-growing daggers, the Thylacosmilus evolved deep bone sheaths that hung down from its lower jaw. When its mouth was closed, the teeth were tucked into these pockets. It was a specialist killer that evolved in the isolation of South America, proving that if a design works, evolution will try to build it, even if it has to use a completely different blueprint. Number 7. Synthetoceras, the slingshot face. In the world of prehistoric herbivores, having horns is standard. But Synthetoceras took it to a ridiculous level. A relative of modern camels and deer, this creature lived in the grasslands of North America. Most males had 2 small horns above their eyes, but that wasn't enough. Growing right off the bridge of its nose was a massive 3-foot-long horn that split at the end like a Y. It looked exactly like a giant slingshot was attached to its face. Scientists believe this wasn't for defense, it would be too awkward to fight with. Instead, it was likely a billboard for attracting mates. The bigger and weirder your nose slingshot, the more successful you were. It's one of the most impractical-looking appendages in the history of mammals. Number 6. Arsinoitherium, the beast of the Fayum. Deep in the ancient swamps of what is now Egypt lived the Arsinoitherium. At first glance, you'd call it a rhinoceros. It was huge, heavy, and built like a tank. But look closer at the snout. Instead of a horn made of hair, like a modern rhino, it had 2 massive hollow horns of solid bone growing side by side. Because these horns were hollow, some paleontologists think they might have been used as resonance chambers to produce deep, booming calls that could travel for miles through thick jungle. And here's the kicker. It's not related to rhinos at all. Its closest living relatives are elephants and manatees. It's a perfect example of convergent evolution, where different animals end up looking the same because they live in similar environments. Number 5. Uintatherium, evolution by committee. If you asked 5 different people to design a monster and then mashed their ideas together, you'd get Uintatherium. This animal is a total contradiction. It was the size of a rhinoceros, but its skull was flat and shovel-like. On top of that skull were 6 bony knobs that looked like horns. And just in case 6 horns weren't enough, it also had 2 massive downward-pointing saber tusks. It was a plant eater that looked like a nightmare. Despite its fearsome appearance, it had one of the smallest brains relative to its body size of any mammal in history. It didn't need to be smart. It just needed to be too weird and too well-armed for anything to try and eat it. Number 4. Chalicotherium, the horse gorilla. This is perhaps the most broken-looking animal on the list. The Chalicotherium was a relative of the horse, but it didn't have hooves. It had long, powerful front arms ending in massive curved claws. Because the claws were so long, it couldn't walk on its palms, so it walked on its knuckles, exactly like a modern gorilla. Imagine a horse-headed beast, 9 feet tall at the shoulder, knuckle-walking through the forest. It would use its massive claws to hook onto high tree branches and pull them down to its mouth. It was a sloth horse that filled a niche that no longer exists today. When you see a Chalicotherium in motion, you realize just how many failed experiments are buried in the Earth's crust. Number 3. Andrewsarchus, the wolf in sheep's clothing. For decades, the Andrewsarchus was a mystery. We only found 1 skull, but that skull was 3 feet long. Based on that, scientists reconstructed a predator the size of a rhinoceros, the largest carnivorous land mammal ever. But the mystery deepened when we looked at its teeth and DNA relatives. It isn't a wolf, it isn't a cat, it's an ungulate, a hoofed animal. Its closest relatives are hippos and whales. Imagine a giant predatory wolf pig the size of a car, with a jaw that could crush a turtle shell like a grape, but instead of claws it has hooves. It was the apex predator of Eocene Asia, a nightmare version of a farm animal that ruled the world for millions of years. Number 2. Indricotherium, the walking skyscraper. We have to talk about scale. The Indricotherium was a rhinoceros that grew so large it stopped looking like a rhino and started looking like a dinosaur. It stood 16 feet tall at the shoulder. If it stood outside your second-story bedroom window, it could look you in the eye. It weighed 20 tons, as much as 4 African elephants. It didn't have horns, it didn't need them. Its sheer size was its defense. It lived like a mammalian version of a brachiosaurus, stripping the tops of trees that no other animal could reach. For a brief window in time, mammals proved they could be just as colossal as the dinosaurs they replaced. Number 1. Desmostylus, the suction vacuum. The number 1 spot goes to the Desmostylus because it is simply unclassifiable. It looked like a hippo with 4 flippers. It lived on the coasts of the North Pacific, moving between land and sea like a giant 1,000-pound seal. But its teeth are what make it truly bizarre. They look like a cluster of vertical pipes or tubes fused together. No other animal in history has teeth like this. Scientists believe it used its mouth like a high-powered vacuum, literally sucking prehistoric seaweed and shellfish off the rocks. It belongs to the only order of mammals to ever go completely extinct without leaving a single descendant. It was a total original, a creature that lived by its own rules in a world that was still trying to figure out what a mammal was supposed to be. The Cenozoic wasn't just a bridge to the modern world. It was a laboratory of giants and monsters that were just as impressive as the dinosaurs. These 10 animals are proof that evolution is never finished. It's just waiting for the next empty throne. Which of these experimental giants would you be most terrified to meet in the wild? The knuckle-walking horse or the wolf pig with hooves? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of the forgotten files of our planet, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the prehistoric world. Thanks for watching.